Pink Slip, Episode 2, Part 2. Let me just clarify something because I know it's going to come up. When I express my feelings about the First Lady and she being a white woman in a 99.9% with a bar over the 9 black church, how I felt that was a problem. And I know the question is going to arise, then why did you join a church when you knew that was the setup? Because when I joined the church, that was not the setup. When I joined this church, there was an old elderly pastor, which I had a great deal of respect for. But when he retired, which he was coerced into retiring. I'm not going to even get into that. But he was coerced into retiring so this younger man could assume the position of pastor and leader. And he came in, he was a member of the church, and his wife was a member of the church. So he kind of inherited that position, and she inherited this position of First Lady. Had I came in under that leadership, I would have never joined that church. As a matter of fact, when the vote went out to vote him in, which wasn't even done right, but we had a piece of paper and all you had to do was say yes or no. And that was not how the vote was supposed to have gone because there was no other candidate we were considering. So here we had say we had 60 members. 3 of us said no. And there were 3 no's, and I was definitely one of the 3 because I saw the writing on the wall. So he becomes pastor. His wife is this First Lady. She's the First Lady of this black church with all of these, most black churches are heavy membership is women. So here you have this black church with these senior black women that were probably very active during the civil rights movement with this First Lady that she's white. And I talked about judging. I'm very observant. And if a person has ulterior motives, if a person doesn't pull their weight, if a person to me is lazy, I'm going to say it. I'm going to call it out. And another thing, there were a number of things that just again rubbed me the wrong way. She would do this thing where if she wasn't happy, she would pout and she wouldn't come to church for months on end. But when her birthday rolled around, when pastor anniversary rolled around, when the holiday rolled around, and there was going to be a collection, she was front and center, all smiles. I can't stand a person that's an opportunist. And that's what it was. And again, because the church was comprised of predominantly senior citizen women, they're not going to raise an issue about it. They mumbled about it, but they're not going to talk above a whisper. So that went on for some years. Like I said, I was there over 13 years. And when I said that I was in full service, Sunday school teacher, Sunday school superintendent, trustee, women's ministry, women's choir, van driver, and honestly, I didn't mind doing those things because the way I saw it was, 1, I was doing it unto the Lord, and 2, I am a believer that you need to model what you want people to aspire toward. So, in me modeling service, I was hopeful that people would begin to serve, which, yeah, that was lost upon a lot of folk there. Because there's this thing that 80%, 20% does 80% of the work in the church, which is, I believe that statistic still is proven to be the situation. So, I had started noticing that this first lady was coming less and less and less. And I knew that there was trouble on the horizon as far as marital trouble. But I didn't know why. Okay? So she kind of disappeared, and I noticed that another white woman showed up. And I was like, okay. It was probably I think it was 2 or 3 of them that came at the same time. I think it was 2 white women and a white man. The 3 of them would come. And I thought, I wonder what brings them to this church. Because it's a black church and the church is in the projects. So, I'm just observing, making a mental note. And I was a good little recruiter. I recall one day I was at the cell phone store. And I saw a girl that I used to have some interaction with, some years that had gone by. And I'm so happy to see her. It was one of those things. We had that kind of relationship, when we see each other, it was almost like we saw each other yesterday. So we're standing in the middle of this cell phone store and we're just, catching up. And I said, hey, you should come and visit my church, sometime. Because, like I said, I had some good relationships and I was hopeful that, we could be a pillar of our community. So I go, hey, you should come and visit our church sometime. And we're in the middle of a cell phone store. And in her loudest voice, she says, what church you go to? And I tell her the name of the church. And she, in her loudest voice, she's not using her indoor voice, she says, you mean the church where the pastor is cheating on his wife? I grabbed her by her arm and hustled her out of the store. And I'm whispering. And I said, hey, why would you say something like that? Because I was kind of in shock. I said, hey, why would you say something like that? And she told me, why don't you know? That was her response. How could you not know? And she proceeded to tell me that it was common knowledge that at his secular job, he was having a full-blown adulterous affair with a colleague. And the colleague was the new white woman that shows up at our church, sitting in the second row. And I thought, does it get any more brazen than this? Because if this is how you are going to conduct yourself, how can you counsel anyone on their marriage, their relationships? What grounds are you standing on that you can counsel people to live righteous, make righteous decisions, when you yourself are just living however you want?